Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another episode of my palette roulette series in which I let an app choose a palette for me. I use it all week. I come back to you. I talk to you about my findings of the palette, show you some swatches, show you some pictures, and then we move on and pick another palette. Today we are going to be going over the Juvia's Place Warrior 3 palette. And, you know, I have to be honest, you guys, I wasn't going to pick up this palette until I saw the inside of it. And then once I got it home, I kind of wondered if I actually needed it because I have this giant stack of Juvia's Place palettes that I feel like can be duped out with this palette. So we're going to practice a little bit of that today. I'm going to show you some of the potential dupes in each one of this guy's shades that could be replaced in any of the other Juvia's Place palettes that you might already have in your collection. If you don't have any, then score. You've got some great shades in this palette. If you have one in particular, seems to have a lot of dupes or dupe-ish shades that are also in this palette. And I think that what drew me to that is there are some pictures on Pinterest of this palette stacked up next to the Zulu palette, and they are quite similar. But I think that once you see them swatched out, you might feel differently. So this is the Juvia's Place Warrior 3 palette. This is a colorful palette backed up against the Warrior original palette and then the Warrior 2 palette, which are a matte neutral palette and a shimmer neutral palette. And then we have this guy here, which is definitely not neutral. This is the exterior of the palette. Juvia's Place is known for their amazing artwork on the exterior of their palettes. Like, they just have some crazy awesome artwork on their palettes. This is what the exterior of this palette looks like. It is beautiful. I do love the exterior of this package. And they started making them glossy, whereas a lot of them have been matte in the past. This is the inside of the palette. The inside artwork does very much mimic the exterior artwork, and they do not come with a mirror. But with that being said, this palette is a $20 palette, and I think that that's how they keep the cost down, truly, is by really not skimming on the packaging, because that's not what they're doing. This packaging is beautiful and it's a nice cardboard, heavy cardboard packaging with a good magnet, but not including some of the perks of palettes that might cost you 40 bucks. So the Juvia's Place Warrior 3 palette does cost, as I said, $20. It does have 1.14 ounces, which is roughly 0.13 ounces per pan in the 9 shadow pans that are in here. It does have 5 stars in 16 reviews on Juvia's Place. I might think that was suspect if there were more than 16 reviews, but there really are just 16 reviews. It is a fairly new palette. I think it came out in November. And then at Ulta, it does have 4.6 stars, and there are 31 reviews for that. These are the 9 shades in this palette. I do have a good share of them on my lids today. My lids just have these 2 shades on them, and then underneath my eyes, I do have the green and the purple, and this guy here, just to buff out the color. I think this eye look turned out so pretty. I actually really dig my eye look today. There are 9 shades in this palette. 7 of them are matte, and then there are 2 shimmers. The 2 shimmers are these guys down here. It's very much a primary in tone kind of palette, but what I like about this palette is I feel like it is good for all the seasons. You have your really crazy bright tones for like spring and summer, and then you get down in here and you have some really dark tones that would look good in winter and fall time as well. I think this is a palette that you can incorporate those pops of color into any eye look year-round. On the website, it says it's inspired by the tenacity, courage, and strength of women leaders all across the nations. Juvia's place is always cruelty-free, and they always do a really good job of showcasing people that post to Instagram and have a good eye look going on if you hashtag the Juvia's Place company, which I think is really cool. This is a brand that is Black owned. It's also a brand that is woman owned, and I think that that is spectacular. But because of that, the pigmentation in these shadows is crazy awesome. It always is, and every single one of their palettes never has disappointed me. I do think that they are on, I know that they are on my top 5 brands. This would be my number 1 drugstore brand, drugstore price range brand for sure. They have the pigmentation that is there, and there's next to no fallout with every single one of their shadows, which is crazy to me because they do the crazy colors that are included in this palette in all of their palettes. They do have some amazing color stories that happen. They also don't care. They just don't care. They throw together a color story and they call it a palette and they hope that people buy it. And you know what? People do. People buy them because they're inexpensive and they have the payoff that people want. There's my rant on Juvia's Place. I have done a couple of Juvia's Place palette roulettes. If you're interested in watching a little bit more about, you know, my findings on the brand or my findings on the particular formulation or any of that, please visit some of those other videos. Today, I want to spend a lot of time looking at the potential dupes that are within this same brand that you can get in any of their other palettes. So I'm going to do some swatches really quick, get that out of the way of this palette. I will tell you that as a Juvia's Place connoisseur since I first started this channel, I think my very first Juvia's Place palette was not long into me starting this palette, this channel, and I'm not sure when they came into fruition. But I've been getting Juvia's Place palettes since, you know, about 3 years ago. Their formula has definitely changed. Some of their mattes used to be kind of grippy in the pan, and that's not so with this palette in particular. This is Masai. It is a matte primary green. This one is a little bit patchy in big spaces. So there was one look that I had this all over my eye, kind of a dark, like really grungy kind of look. And I loved the look, but I really had to work hard with this green because it can become a little bit patchy. It doesn't like to be put on top of other colors because then it just kind of wears away. It doesn't play as well with the other shades as the other shades do. It is a beautiful green tone. Then we have this one here, which is Nzinga, I think it's called. It is a matte primary yellow. It's super pigmented even on first swipe, but it does get more and more pigmented the more and more you layer it onto itself, and it does a really good job being built up. It's also a wonderful color to blend out any of these shades in this palette. This shade here is called Kahina, and that's a horrible swatch, so I'm gonna go in again. This is what Kahina is, and I think that as you guys see it, it looks very red, but it's actually not a very red toned shadow. This is a matte, what I would call raspberry, because it's not quite pink and it's not quite red. It does want to be a red, but it just blends out very much a raspberry tone. It's a little bit darker of a pink than a pink and a little bit pinker of a red than a red. So I would call it a raspberry. I would say that it is more red than it is pink, but it is too pink to pair with any of the other, like the bubblegum pink in this palette, because it just wants to be a pink at that point and they look way too similar to each other. This one here is Jarawa. It's a matte dark salmon color. It's a little bit too pink to be an orange, but it does look very orange in my eye look today. So it very much depends on how you pair it. But that one is Jarawa. Jarawa. And then we have the purple in the palette, which is called Candace. It is a matte, bright purple, and that is what it looks like. It really does blend well, and it really does build well to a really dark purple opacity, but on initial swipe it does have a bit of a pinker than bluer base, so it does look pink on when you blend it out. And as with all of the vibrant colors in this brand's build up, they do stain. There's quite a bit of staining. This is the purple on my thumb stained, the green on my forefinger, the yellow even stained. So there is quite a bit of staining with this brand. I think it's just because of the dyes that they use to keep them cruelty free. But all of these are so smooth and not super powdery. You guys can see that I've dipped my finger in and there's next to no powder. All right, the last 4 shades are Fenty, which is kind of a bubblegum pink. It's a great color and it really is a bubblegum pink. It kind of reminds me of Barbie. And then we have the first shimmer in the palette. This one is called Congo. It's a shimmer turquoise. And then we have this guy here, which is Karama, which in the palette looks like a gray, but it's very lavender. Can you guys see that? It is such a pretty color, and paired with the purple in this palette, oh my god, it is a dream. And these are amazing shimmers. They just go on so beautifully. And then the last one in the palette is this baby blue shade, which pinky swatches are always horrible for me, called Gola. It is a matte light baby blue. So these are the shades you have in the palette. And I think that the shades are stunning. They all work well with each other. I think they are just really pretty. And depending on how you pair them, you can get a little bit different of a color story from them, I feel like. Of course, these are all going to work better with a white base primer. I feel like I used a white base primer almost every single day that I did put them on. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Juvia's Place shadows, they do work well with or without a primer. They do go on spectacularly. They perform just as well without a primer as they do with a primer. They last a long time. I got a good 15 hours of wear even out of the shimmers in this palette, and have with almost every single one of my palettes that I have done one of these palette roulette reviews for Juvia's Place. But because of the color story and the intensity of the shadow and the brightness of the shadow, you always want to wear a base that's going to help show that off. And a white base just over the entire eye really helps just show that off. This eye look here does have a white base underneath it. That white base is peeking out over the top. I just left it there as like my brow bone highlight. I didn't put another shadow over the top. And so the yellow is as vibrant as it is, not because I packed it on, but because I put it on top of a white base. A lot of you that are watching me already know that. So I'm just gonna stop talking. But when I say there's little to no fallout, there's literally little to no fallout. I don't know if you guys can see, but these shades, not even the palette itself isn't even a mess. And I was just digging in with my fingers. I wasn't really careful. I'm not really careful. I don't wipe off my palettes after I use them every single time. So there's that. I would like to say that there are some dupes out there within the Juvia's Place line that you might find that you don't need to purchase this palette for. And so some of the things that immediately came to mind is the Afrique palette. The two greens in these palettes are very, very similar. The yellows are not. This one is a more bright, like almost neon yellow, and this one is definitely a primary yellow. But the two greens are very, very similar to each other. This one is the Warrior 3 and this one is the Afrique. You guys can see on my finger they look very, very similar. And then when I swatch them, again, Warrior 3, Afrique, they look very, very similar. The Afrique one is maybe a little bit more grungy than the one that's in the Warrior 3 palette. I would say that some people might also look at this palette and see this red here and this orange here and this blue here and also think that they are the same, but this orange here is a little bit more pink in nature. It's a little bit more salmon, and if you see them in person, you would know that, but one of them is definitely, this is Afrique and this is Warrior. So they're definitely two different shades of orange. And again, the blues, this one is more of a baby blue in this palette here. This blue is a lot more blue. It's a lot more blue based than it is white based. I think that you guys can probably see that just looking at the palette. And then these reds, this one here and this one here, this is definitely more of a red and this is definitely more of a pink. And I can swatch those for you because that's a little bit harder to see. This is Afrique and this is Warrior. This is Afrique and this is Warrior. Those were horrible swatches, I'm sorry. The one from Afrique is a little bit more brown toned red, kind of like a brick red. So also when I first looked at this palette, this shimmer right here, the first thing it reminded me of was the Magic palette and this guy here. But upon further review of those, they do look very similar, but when I swatch them, this one is Magic and this one is Warrior. You can see that the one from Warrior is a little bit, it's just more lavender. And after putting it on my eye, I did see that as well. Can swatch them. This one is Magic. This one is Warrior. They're just, this one looks a lot more blue next to that other one, which is a lot more silver based, a lot more gray based. One of the other palettes that I thought of when I saw that gray was the Coral palette and this gray here. Now I haven't used the Coral palette yet, but digging into them, they do look very, very similar. Let's check them out because this will be the first time I've touched the Coral palette. Oh, they're also very, very different. This one definitely looks more like a silver. This is from the Warrior palette. So we have Coral and we have Warrior. There wasn't really anything else in any of the other palettes that I could think of except for maybe the Saharan 2, maybe the Masquerade has a couple, but this purple is more of a shimmer purple, so it wouldn't be anything like the purple in the Warrior palette. This is definitely more green and this is definitely more blue than this blue shimmer. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let's swatch this blue because it looks the most similar. Nope, definitely different. This one is the Masquerade and this one is the Warrior 3. This is Warrior 3 and that is Masquerade. They're both beautiful, but this one does look a little bit more white based and this one looks a little bit more blue based for sure. You guys, Juvia's Place is where it's at. I would say there's probably nothing in Festival that looks like anything in this palette. Those blues, maybe. I think this blue in this one is a little bit of a satin and that is definitely a matte. So Saharan 2 has a blue in it. This one here, which I think might look a lot like the, how am I gonna do this? I did it on two different hands. Those two might be dupes for each other. How am I gonna do this? All right, so this is from the Saharan 2, and this one is from the Warrior. This one's also from the Warrior. This is Saharan 2, and this is Warrior. Saharan 2 is definitely a darker shade than the one in Warrior. All right, so the one I really wanted to dig into because it was on Pinterest as an out and out dupe for it is Zulu. This is Zulu. This is Warrior 3. How do we feel about this? I feel like you can see that they are not duping each other. I think that they're very complementary to each other, but I think that you can really outright see that they're not duping each other. I just took out a giant chunk of this green here with my fingernail, which just kind of pisses me off. So looking at these, I think that you can see that there's just not a whole lot of dupes in either one of these palettes for each other in the palette. I think that the purples we might go ahead and swatch, but I think that this raspberry here is a lot more pink than this raspberry here, but not quite as pink as this. So, and I think that you can see that, like when I look in the monitor, I can see that, and I hope that you guys can as well. We'll definitely swatch the two purples because I don't think that you can see that in the monitor. But even the oranges, like this orange, I definitely feel like looks a lot more burnt than this orange here, which looks to be a lot more basic primary color. This yellow is definitely more basic primary color than this one here, which seems to have a little bit of a grungier yellow tone to it. I feel like there isn't a dupe for the blues in the Zulu palette, and when you look at the greens, this one's definitely more of an evergreen, and this one's more of like an aquamarine green. It's kind of got like a tealy almost look to it, and this one's a shimmer, and this one's a shimmer. So it definitely doesn't dupe itself within the two palettes. So I really think that the only shadows that could be duped between these two palettes are those purples. So we will go ahead and swatch those purples, but even on camera, I do think that you can see that those two purples are not the same. I think that they're definitely complementary to each other. This one is Warrior and this one is Zulu. You guys can see, hopefully, on just finger swatches that those are completely different. This one's got a little bit more of a pinker base, honestly, and this one's got a little bit more of a blue base, I feel. That is Warrior, which, like I said, has a lot more of a pink base. It's going to blend out in a pinker fashion, and that one is Zulu, which is more of a blue base. So purples don't swatch very well anyways, but hopefully you guys can see that they're just not the same. None of these palettes really are the same. I think that that's one thing that Juvia's Place does really well, is they continue to come up with these crazy, awesome, vibrant, out there color stories that people want and people love. I love Juvia's Place. I think that Juvia's Place is amazing. I love this palette. It blends so good. I have so many other palettes that have crazy, awesome, beautiful color stories like this that have shadows that just don't perform. And while the purple in this palette does have to be kind of built up to make the purple work, it's not patchy. It is a beautiful, like, purple toned pink even while you are building it up to have a little bit more of the purple color that you want. That's the one downfall I would say that they have, is that sometimes their greens are patchy. I love the Tribe palette. It's all greens. I love this palette, but their greens are pretty patchy, but they blend super well and they pack on super well. So they get better the more you pack onto the eye, and they don't look cakey while doing so. The purples tend to look a little bit more pink than they do purple or blue, depending on how deep that base is. And the reds tend to look pink. I don't think Juvia's Place has come up with a red yet that I have felt was a real red. I think that that is their downfall. But, like, honestly, they are an amazing brand, and the color stories that you get in their palettes are awesome. And the price point is awesome. It's an amazing price point for what you're getting. What I would say is if you don't need a rainbow palette, that this isn't going to be the palette for you. If you have Zulu, you might not need this palette as well as Zulu. And the shimmers function so well. They go onto your face. They just kind of melt in. I love these pan sizes because you can tag team them into the rest of your makeup lineup. I used multiple times this week this palette for not only eyeshadows but also for blushes. I don't mind the bigger pans because I can tag team them and make them a 2-for product. This palette also inspired me. You guys noticed, I think, that all this last several weeks that we've done this palette roulette, you've maybe got 2-3 different eye looks. This palette inspired me. Yesterday I did the craziest eye look I have ever done. I even had yellow liner on, and it's just inspiring to sit down and look at a palette like this and think of what you can do. What are the possibilities with this? But I'm also able to make a pretty subdued eye look with a crazy color palette. I love the versatility in the palette. So what have I not hit on? I think I got it all in here. So, okay, with that being said, we are going to pick a new palette. For those of you that don't know, I do have a Samsung Note 9. I did just get Wheel of Fortune Decision Wheel app from my Play Store, and I put all my palettes into it. As we use them, I take the palettes out. As I get new palettes in, I do put them into the wheel, and to spin it, you just hit the button there. And we have the Makeup Revolution Mermaids Forever palette. This is a palette that I have used a couple times, but it's been a dang long time. So let me go get it. I will be right back. That was, I couldn't even find it. Like, I tore my palette section apart looking for it. I hid it from myself when really it was just out in plain sight. I just didn't see it. It's broken, and I had no idea it was broken. So it clasps together right here, but I don't know if you guys can see that. That little divot right there isn't supposed to be there. It's actually supposed to go straight across because that is what holds this palette shut. So it doesn't stay shut, but this is it. This is the Makeup Revolution palette. I did purchase this and another Makeup Revolution palette. I think it was Fortune Favors the Brave or something, some stupid something like that, and got rid of the Fortune Favors the Brave because I did use that palette a couple times and actually kind of hated it. I would say that since Makeup Revolution made these palettes, their formula has gotten a lot better. I have used this palette I think twice. It doesn't look like it's been used in any capacity. What I'm excited about is it does have a lot of different colors in here. What I'm not excited about is they are all super muted in tone. What I do like about this little tiny palette is it does have all these shades in it. It does have a giant mirror, and this palette cost me like $7. So way back when, of course. With that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you liked it enough that you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. It really does help our channels out here. I also hope that you liked it or me enough that you're considering subscribing to my channel. It's free. It's amazing here. I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to subscribe. If you don't, that's cool. But just know I would love for you to. I also, whether you subscribe or not, I hope that you're leaving me a comment down in that comment section down there, because I really do like having a conversation with the people that are watching my videos. So if you do subscribe, please don't forget to hit that notification bell. I do upload content every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and every other Sunday. So I hope that you stick around and that you hit the notification bell so that you're notified every single time I upload. You don't miss a thing, and you get to say hi to me every single time. Oh, and for those of you that celebrated Mother's Day yesterday for your actual live children, your fur babies, your whatever babies, the dads out there who celebrated because they're working the job of mom or dad and dad, happy Mother's Day. Until next time, guys. Bye.